You know, I wouldn't go anywhere by myself. I was always looking over my shoulder because he would just kind of jump out.
Camp Taji, Iraq. In the spring of 2009, Captain Margaret White was sexually abused and harassed by a fellow officer. For months, she told no one.
I was just so fearful that I was willing to put up with him because it was better than the alternative, because I didn't know what the alternative was.
Reports of sexual assault continue to rise in the military, with the most dramatic increases on bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. Equally troubling are Pentagon estimates that as few as 10% of assaults are reported. Now at her home in Texas, Captain White can reflect upon what she calls the most difficult experience in her military career.
I was 18 when I first joined. When I was in college, I wanted money for college. I remember telling my mother when I first joined the Army, because she's like, but you could go to war. And I remember rolling my eyes being like, Mom, there's not going to be a war. It's 1999, you're crazy.
But 6 years later, she was deployed to Iraq. During her training period in Fort Dix, she grew close to a fellow officer, and their relationship turned romantic.
We just had a lot in common. And we were, training together for the deployment 24/7, every single day. We were right next to each other. But when I got to Iraq, I started to just have this sense of unease about him. There would be notes on my door, like it would say like 5:30, going to dinner, where are you? And then 5:45, I came back by, why aren't you here? 6:30, I wonder where you could be. If I pushed him away too much, he would get weirder, his behavior would get more erratic. I already knew I didn't want to have anything to do with him, but he'd be like, well, you never come over, why don't you ever come over? So I'm like, fine, I'll come watch a movie with you. And I was just in there watching a movie with him, and he sexually assaulted me.
We've clearly identified in the Army that there is an issue with sexual harassment and sexual assault that we want to get after.
Carolyn Collins has helped implement new military programs and outreach to curb sexual assault.
In terms of preventing sexual harassment or sexual assault?
It means I care about
we have worked really hard on socializing this issue where folks, it's not a taboo subject to talk about.
I will intervene.
For Ms. Collins, the recent increase in reports may be a good sign.
Our metrics on our strategy calls for the numbers to go up. That's very important for us, that the report numbers, that doesn't mean the actual assaults are going up. And so we're really trying to close that gap and get the reports up and the actual down.
The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are the first where men and women serve together in combat zones. And Captain White's case reveals the complex dynamics that often keep victims from speaking out.
You're in the middle of a war zone, so it's kind of like that one little thing is nothing compared to, there's an IED that went off on this convoy today, and 3 people were injured. So big deal about you. There's that, and then there's the whole, I'm Army. I'm in the Army, I'm tough. I can get past this. Screw everybody else. I can take care of myself.
At Camp Taji, just north of Baghdad, the claustrophobic setting made it nearly impossible for Captain White to avoid the unwanted advances.
And I was just keeping it in and not really telling anybody about it. It came to the point where I didn't have a problem going out on convoys, going outside the wire, being on missions. That was nothing. It was just walking around by myself at night. And I didn't realize until it all kind of came to a head that how much stress it was putting on me.
Captain White never told her superiors about the harassment, but in the summer of 2009, military officials informed her that they were investigating the officer for crimes against other females.
It all made sense, though, when they started to say stuff. I was like, it's not just me.
Folks hadn't always recognized predator behavior before. We trained our leaders on what predator behavior looks like and how do they groom a victim. It's not a cut and dry he said, she said.
Captain White decided to provide a formal statement to investigators. Prosecutors charged the officer with 19 counts, including, in Captain White's case, stalking. During the investigation, the officer remained on base.
I'd see him at the chow hall sometimes. I got a restraining order against him.
He eventually pled guilty and was discharged from the military. Captain White said she was satisfied with the Army's handling of her case.
I handled it at the time in the situation what I thought was the best way, which was just to keep my head down and keep going. Just kind of an Army thing to say, drive on.